We've all seen Japanese products at one point in our lives, and in this occasion I'm not gonna talk about the technology like cars, projectors, phones. Cars. They've been with us for a very long time. There's also the food, which became really popular all around, even though we kinda modified it heavily, almost to the point of non-similarity, like adding avocado to sushi. But really, one of the most noticeable impacts of Japan over the internet and its culture is definitely their media. Japan's content is known from anime, cartoons with a really differentiated style from the ones in the West. These productions are under charge of many animation houses, like Toei, Kadokawa, with studios, also MAPPA. You've probably heard about it. Also, there's video games, with huge success mediated by Nintendo and Sega since 1983. Through famous titles like Mario, Donkey Kong, Sonic, Super Tag, Space Invaders. Also, it was Tomohiro Nishikado, engineer and game designer in Taito Corporation, that made Space Invaders, a huge phenomenon for gaming. Then Taito gave American company Atari a license for its release on consoles, which dramatically increased their sales. But probably, out of all the media out there, the most unregarded aspect is their comedy culture. Well, maybe it's because we usually take these kind of TV shows as input.
透明の筒の中にあるものを入れて
じゃあ模擬の対戦相手は、隣にいるじゃあ大島涼香。
You probably felt very uncomfortable watching that. I did as well. At least I think it's safe to say that's weird. But you know, it's not always like that. In fact, I believe they do this kind of thing to attract viewership of absurd and grotesque scenarios like these. Which is fair, considering the monstrosity some American studios have done, but with themes that are just really unethical.
That's my mom right there.
There are many other humoristic TV shows in Japan, which we don't understand either. The Occident, or rather the West, which is basically just how the internet calls the part of the world, which involves countries from the continent of America and the Western Europe, sees that type of content as quote-unquote weird. Well, why is this? Well, it's understandable, as the media in other parts of the world is different to each other. Doesn't it make sense? Of course it does. Humor is, generally speaking, a feature of each culture. Though yeah, like I said before, it's obvious that exaggerated stuff like those TV shows is gonna disperse all around, but of course it is not part of the common media in Japan. Instead, there's manzai, which is the most common form of comedy in Japan nowadays. There are many others like ancient gyogen, which was commonly performed in a theater, really similar to manzai as well. But what is it about? Well, it's just like the good old stand-up comedy shows we see here on television, where the main focus is put into the words. But the main difference is that these ones are highly performative, including not just one comedian, but two, given a spectacle that it's not so common in the West. There's two types of individuals in manzai. The first is boge, which would translate to something like funny person, and the second, tsukkomi, which was the serious, straightforward one. They might use physical interactions, but it isn't the most important thing. It serves as a secondary tool to emphasize the words, not the action itself. So it isn't really much different to American or European countries, as every media related to humor, horror and personal feelings inside a country is based on the experience and culture of the people from that country. It's just difficult for someone outside to understand the context, and that makes so much sense when you watch a stand-up comedy from your country and realize that so many of the things they talk about is deeply related to the socio-economic context around you.
No, but really, New York City's a great place to live if you're a cockroach.
You suck!
I know.
Anyways, the main point I'm stating here is we just don't understand Japanese humor, and that's a fact. Most of us won't even learn the language, and I try to do so because I really like it. But even then, it wouldn't be enough to get immersed in their comedy, because it's a whole different world. It's normal not to understand it as a tourist. So what is it with the title and the scary thumbnail? The Japanese humor is the Western's horror. Well, as I read once, within the unknown lies terror. And this is especially true in some of the mysterious Easter eggs some games hold. Take Sonic for example. Yeah, Sonic the Hedgehog CD version from the Sega CD console back in 1993. This was an additional of the Sonic 1 game, first intended to be just an enhanced version, but it resulted as a whole different game. Sega is known for planting many Easter eggs across their games, but there's this particular one in this edition that gave a lot to talk about around the whole gaming community. This was the test screen Sonic Easter egg, which goes something like this. In the menu screen, if you were to tap a certain combination of control buttons, down, 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 left, right, and A, then go to the sound test mode and input numbers 46, 12, and 25, a weird screen would appear, showing the Sega Enterprise introduction text, and in the background, an array of 24 Sonics with a very disturbing face. The music playing would be the boss theme of the game. It is funny though, because the American version is the only one with this song. The Japanese one is actually really fun, and not scary at all. Now I wonder if they hate American kids. Also, the text below was read as Majin, which means demon or devil in Japanese. You see, it looks terrifying at first, but this is why I talked about humor before. Just take a look at the art. Doesn't this look like a real face? Well, it is. In fact, Masato Nishimura mentioned this as a big misunderstanding. The face in question would be a funny self-portrait of himself. Notice how funny or humorous is part of the narrative. Also, the words below would not mean Majin or demon, but rather Mazin, which is like a pseudonym for himself. Just a name. You see, there's something I haven't talked about yet, which is, I think, quite related to this phenomenon. That is, the art of making strange faces. Hengao. Hengao literally translates to weird face, with kanji hen meaning weird or strange, and kanji gao meaning face. This trend was popularized through Japanese comedian Waki, who would make this as a part of his routines throughout his career. But again, let's take another example, this time with Nintendo. Nintendo, one of the biggest game companies in the world, released in 1989 the very well-known Game Boy. This small console was a really famous invention, with more than 1,000 games released, including the first generation of Pokemon, Tetris, the second generation of Pokemon, Super Mario Land, Super Mario, Dr. Mario, Donkey Kong, KV. Well, you know, it was a huge success. But in 1998, they launched an accessory for the Game Boy. It was called Pocket Camera, Pocket to Camera, which does pretty much what you would think it does. It could shoot grayscale photographs from real life, and it included other features like editing or creating drawings made by the user. Well, the thing is, people soon realized a little secret inside the features offered by this accessory. Inside the interface, if you were to press the run button while you were on one of the many screens, the game would freeze, and in some occasions showing a disturbing image, a face with many strange scribbles drawn over, with the text, "Who are you running from?" or "create an animation" on top of said image. And there again, remember the hangout trend? I think it's highly related to that. Rather than scary imagery meant to traumatize children from the time, it was probably intended to be a funny secret moment. I mean, just a goofy section of the Game Boy made for laughs. But then it backfired. A whole different reaction from the players, which were terrified of the discovery. And indeed, the intention of these secret pictures, supposedly by this Reddit user, is revealed by Japanese composer Hirozaku Tanaka from the Nintendo team, stating that the photos were just a funny edit of employees from America made by one of them claiming to be good at doodling. It's no joke. Not knowing about the culture and the stuff Japanese comedy is based on, it just looks like all of these occurrences were meant to scare or terrify others, when in reality it's just to make an entertaining secret for children meant to play those games. What I'm saying is, many of the things we find weird, scary or uncomfortable in Japan are usually just a way of comedy. Well, with the exception of actual horror, which I think they do really well. We might go and look for a meaning and scary facts about the things we find, but sometimes they turn out just to be part of something rather hilarious. I mean, I doubt the Sonic test screen or the Game Boy camera Easter eggs were designed to scare, but rather amuse the players. Now, I don't think they made a good choice with the presentation. It does look quite unnerving. The first time I saw them, I almost shit my pants.